In the heart of America's largest naval base, a single act of arrogance would ignite a chain reaction that changed military history. This is the story of Colonel Diana Washington, a woman underestimated, humiliated, and ultimately unstoppable. Stay tuned to witness how justice is served, Navy SEAL style. Colonel Diana Washington stepped onto the grounds of Naval Base Norfolk with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen the world at its most dangerous. Officially, she was there for a routine inspection of the base's special training facilities, a task that should have been straightforward for someone of her experience. Unofficially, however, her mission was far more sensitive. Diana had been sent by the highest levels of the Pentagon to investigate troubling reports of systematic discrimination and abuse of authority. Allegations that had reached the Secretary of Defense himself. She wore her uniform with pride, but her true rank and purpose were known only to a select few. To everyone else, she was just another officer, a face in the crowd, and perhaps to some, an easy target. It didn't take long for the base's culture to reveal itself. On her third day, as Diana walked through a bustling hallway, she was intercepted by Lieutenant Jake Morrison, a Navy SEAL with a reputation for arrogance and a sense of humor that often crossed the line. Morrison, flanked by his 5 teammates, spotted Diana and saw an opportunity for entertainment. With a smirk, he called out, "Hey girl, what's your rank?" "Private Latte." The words hung in the air, sharp and dismissive, and the laughter that followed was immediate and loud. The sound echoed off the walls, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Morrison's friends joined in, their laughter turning the corridor into a stage for their toxic camaraderie. The joke was clear, the intent unmistakably a black woman in uniform, reduced to a punchline about coffee and presumed incompetence. Diana stood motionless, her face unreadable. She had endured worse in her 15 years of service, but the sting of public humiliation never truly faded. She drew on her training, focusing on her breath for seconds in. 4 seconds hold. 4 seconds out. 4 seconds hold. She refused to give them the reaction they wanted. Instead, she observed. She took in every detail. The names on their tags, the faces twisted in laughter, the words that would later become evidence. Morrison, sensing what he thought was vulnerability, pressed on. "Sorry I didn't hear your answer," he said, stepping closer, his tone mocking. "Or maybe you don't know how to read ranks yet. I know the Army has special programs for people like you." The implication was clear, and the laughter grew louder. Diana's silence was not submission. It was strategy. She had learned long ago that sometimes the most powerful response was no response at all. She let Morrison and his friends believe they had put her in her place, all the while cataloging every insult, every sneer, every witness. She was not just another black woman trying to survive in a hostile environment. She was a colonel who had commanded classified operations on 3 continents, saved the lives of senators, and worn decorations most soldiers could only dream of. But here, in this moment, she was invisible, her achievements erased by the color of her skin and the assumptions of those around her. Morrison made sure his performance was public. "Look, guys, we found someone who doesn't even know where she is. She probably got lost looking for the kitchen or the laundry room." The words were meant to sting, to remind Diana and everyone watching of the unspoken rules that govern the base. For a brief moment, Diana lowered her eyes, and Morrison took it as a sign of defeat. He couldn't see what was really happening. Diana was memorizing every detail, every word, every face. She was building a case, one humiliation at a time. The base was a world unto itself, governed by its own codes and hierarchies. Diana knew how to navigate it better than most. Her career had been forged in the crucible of high-stakes missions, where a single mistake could mean disaster. She had learned to read people, to anticipate threats, to remain calm under pressure. Here, those skills served her well. She watched as Morrison and his friends reveled in their power, oblivious to the fact that they were being observed by someone far more dangerous than they realized. No one at the base knew who Diana really was. They saw only what they wanted to see: a woman, a minority, an outsider. They didn't see the years of service, the classified operations, the medals earned in silence. They didn't know that Diana Washington had been sent not just to inspect, but to investigate, to expose, and, if necessary, to bring justice with the precision of a military operation. As the laughter faded and the crowd dispersed, Diana remained standing, her resolve unshaken. She knew that justice, like any mission, required patience, preparation, and the courage to face the enemy no matter where they might be hiding. The days that followed, Diana's arrival at Naval Base Norfolk became a relentless test of endurance. Morrison, emboldened by the laughter of his peers and the silence of his superiors, made Diana the target of a campaign that was as calculated as it was cruel. The joke about the milk coffee soldier spread like wildfire, spurred in the barracks, repeated in the gym, and echoed in the cafeteria. Every time Diana entered a room, Morrison would announce her presence with a smirk. "Look who's here, our expert in." What was her job again? Oh, right. No one knows. The words were always loud enough for everyone to hear, and the laughter that followed was a chorus of complicity. Some soldiers joined in, eager to avoid becoming the next target. Others looked away, their silence a shield against Morrison's attention. But also a silent betrayal. The public humiliation was relentless. At lunch, Morrison would approach Diana's table with his group, turning every meal into a performance. He would ask her questions about basic military protocol in a voice dripping with sarcasm. As if she were a lost civilian who had wandered onto the base by mistake. "Tell us, what's the standard procedure for equipment inspection?" he'd ask, pausing for effect. "Or is that too advanced for people in your field?" Diana answered every question with calm, technical precision. Her knowledge so thorough that any seasoned veteran would have been impressed. But Morrison twisted her correct answers into further mockery, imitating her voice, feigning exaggerated surprise, and making sure the laughter never stopped. "Wow, someone memorized the manual. What dedication," he'd sneer, turning her competence into a punchline. What stung the most was not the direct insults. Diana had faced worse in her career, but the way others responded. Some women and minorities, who might have been expected to show solidarity, instead laughed along or kept their heads down, afraid to draw Morrison's ire. The base, Diana realized, was a place where fear and conformity ruled, and where standing out could be dangerous. Yet, through it all, she maintained her composure. She answered every question, endured every slight, and never let her frustration show. Her discipline was unbreakable, her resolve forged in the fires of far more dangerous missions. But Morrison was not content with words alone. During a morning physical training exercise, he escalated his campaign. As the company jogged in formation, he accidentally bumped into Diana with enough force to make her stumble in front of everyone. "Careful there, soldier," he called out, his voice full of fake concern. "The Army doesn't have insurance for accidents involving visitors." The laughter that followed was sharper, more pointed, and Diana felt the eyes of the entire company on her. She steadied herself, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her falter. The next day, Morrison took things even further. During lunch, he approached Diana's table, carrying his tray with a theatrical flourish. In a single, calculated move, he spilled orange juice all over her uniform. "Jesus, how clumsy of me," he exclaimed, making a show of dabbing at her with napkins. "But look, now your uniform is more colorful. It suits you better." The cafeteria erupted in laughter, but this time, Diana did not get up and leave. She calmly took some napkins, wiped up the liquid, and looked Morrison straight in the eye. "Accidents happen," she said, her voice steady, "especially with people who don't pay attention to where they're stepping." There was a subtle authority in her tone, a quiet confidence that unsettled Morrison for a moment. He tried to regain his composure, but something in Diana's gaze made him uneasy. As if he was being studied, cataloged, and judged. What Morrison didn't realize was that every incident, every insult, every act of aggression was being meticulously documented. Diana had begun collecting evidence from the very first day. She noted the time, the place, the witnesses, and the exact words spoken. She discreetly recorded audio when she could, and she kept a detailed log of every interaction. At night, in the privacy of her quarters, she reviewed her notes and cross-referenced them with reports from other bases. The pattern was unmistakable. Morrison's behavior was not an isolated case. It was part of a broader culture of abuse and discrimination that stretched far beyond Norfolk. Diana compiled her findings into a comprehensive report, attaching photographs, transcripts, and testimonies from other soldiers who had suffered similar treatment. She saw the same patterns: officers protecting each other, victims silenced by fear, and a system that allowed bullies like Morrison to thrive. When her report was complete, she sent it through encrypted channels to a secure address known only to a handful of people in Washington. Within 24 hours, her evidence would be in the hands of those with the power to bring real change. As she closed her laptop, Diana knew the battle was far from over. But she also knew that the tide was beginning to turn. Monday morning brought a new level of spectacle to Morrison's campaign. He decided to make Diana the centerpiece of the company briefing, seating her in the front row and addressing her as if she were a child in need of basic instruction. With a cruel smile, he announced to the assembled officers and enlisted personnel, "Let's see if our visitor knows the standard protocol for entering a combat zone. Or is that too technical for guests?" The room was silent, all eyes on Diana, some expecting her to falter, others simply curious. But Diana's response was calm and precise. She not only recited the standard procedures but also detailed the variations required for different terrains and threat levels. Her knowledge so thorough that even the most experienced officers exchanged surprised glances. Morrison, visibly irritated by her flawless answer, tried to regain control. "Impressive. Maybe you memorized the manual. How about a practical demonstration?" He pointed to a state-of-the-art military communication device on the table. "Set this radio to a secure tactical frequency. No instructions." Diana stepped forward, her movements confident and unhurried. In less than 30 seconds, she configured the device, establishing encrypted communication with 3 different bases. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the faint static of the radio. Some soldiers began to whisper, realizing that Diana was far more than she appeared. Morrison, his arrogance shaken, muttered beginner's luck, but his voice had lost its edge. Sensing the shift, Diana decided it was time to plant the first seed of doubt. "Lieutenant Morrison," she said, her tone even, "may I ask a question about command procedures?" Morrison, eager to reassert his authority, nodded. "Of course, education is always welcome." Diana's eyes met his, steady and unblinking. "In your experience, what is the protocol when a senior officer identifies themselves after a period of covert observation of base operations?" The question landed like a silent bomb. Morrison frowned, clearly confused, searching for the right answer, but sensing he was missing something important. "That would depend on the situation," he replied, his confidence wavering. "Why do you ask?" Diana offered only a small, enigmatic smile. "Professional curiosity." That afternoon, Diana received an unexpected visitor. General Patricia Hayes, a woman whose presence commanded respect, arrived at Diana's quarters unannounced. Hayes had been watching Diana for days, noting her posture, her composure, and the way she handled herself under pressure. Sitting down, Hayes got straight to the point. "There's something about you that's been bothering me. I couldn't put my finger on it until this morning. The way you set up that equipment, the way you carry yourself, it's not something you learn in basic training." Diana weighed her options, then made a calculated decision. "General Hayes, I assume you have clearance for classified information?" Hayes nodded, her curiosity piqued. Diana opened her laptop, running a series of biometric checks before revealing a screen that made Hayes sit up straight. "Colonel Diana Washington, Special Operations. Officially dead for 2 years." Hayes exhaled, realization dawning. "Undercover investigation. Morrison, and this whole situation, you're documenting everything." Diana nodded. "Not just Morrison, but the institutional pattern that allows this behavior. I have evidence, audio, photos, testimonies, statistical patterns. This will reach Congress, the Secretary of Defense, even the President." Hayes was silent for a moment, absorbing the scope of Diana's mission. "Do you need anything from me?" she finally asked. "Just be an observer," Diana replied. "Morrison will escalate. When he makes his final mistake, I need reputable witnesses. The opportunity came sooner than expected. On Thursday, Morrison orchestrated what he believed would be Diana's final humiliation. He brought the local mayor, a civilian authority, into the cafeteria. Eager to use the presence of an outsider to amplify Diana's embarrassment, "Mayor Johnson, I'd like to introduce you to our special visitor. Maybe you can explain how things work in the real world since she seems a little lost here." The mayor, clearly uncomfortable, tried to be polite. "And what is your role here at the base?" he asked Diana. Morrison laughed. "That's a good question. We're still trying to figure that out." And his response was calm, but carried a new weight. "My role is quite specific. I'm conducting a comprehensive behavioral assessment for a Senate committee, investigating institutional discrimination in military facilities." Morrison scoffed. "Of course you are, and I'm the Secretary of Defense." Without missing a beat, Diana reached into her purse, pulled out an encrypted military phone, and dialed. "General Hayes, this is Washington. Could you join us in the cafeteria for a moment? I think it's time for some formal introductions." The cafeteria fell silent as General Hayes entered in full-dress uniform, her stars glinting under the lights. She walked directly to Diana's table and in front of everyone delivered a full, formal salute, the kind reserved for equals or superiors. "Colonel Washington," she said, her voice carrying across the room, "I am deeply sorry for the treatment you received during your assignment here. Corrective measures will be implemented immediately." Morrison's face drained of color as the truth settled over the room. The woman he had spent days mocking and humiliating was not only his superior, but one of the most decorated officers in the military. The unmasking was complete. The balance of power had shifted in an instant. The silence in the cafeteria was absolute as General Hayes' salute revealed the truth to everyone present. Morrison stood frozen, his bravado shattered, as Diana rose to her full height, her presence now unmistakably authoritative. She turned to Morrison, her voice calm but carrying the weight of command. "Lieutenant Morrison, I believe you have some explaining to do, not just to me, but to a Senate committee, the Secretary of Defense, and every soldier on this base who has witnessed your behavior." Morrison's eyes darted around the room, searching for support, but his fellow SEALs had already begun to distance themselves, unwilling to share in his disgrace. He stammered, "I didn't know. No one told me." But Diana was prepared. She opened her briefcase and produced a tablet, activating a recording that echoed through the silent cafeteria. Morrison's own voice filled the room, repeating the very words he had used to humiliate her. "Hey girl, what's your rank?" "Coffee with milk, soldier." Audible gasps rippled through the crowd as Diana continued, "I have 7 hours of recordings. Every insult, every joke, every moment you abused your position. I also have statements from 17 soldiers who witnessed your behavior but were afraid to report it." Morrison tried to protest, his voice desperate. "You were undercover. This is entrapment. You provoked me." General Hayes stepped forward, her expression cold and unyielding. "Lieutenant, are you suggesting you were forced to make racist comments, that someone made you humiliate a fellow officer?" Morrison faltered, realizing every word only deepened his guilt. Diana displayed another screen revealing messages from the SEALs' private group, each one more damning than the last. "The little black girl won't last a week. Let's teach this visitor her place." The evidence was overwhelming, and the room seemed to shrink around Morrison as the reality of his actions became undeniable. General Hayes turned to Diana. "Colonel Washington, what is your disciplinary recommendation?" Diana closed the tablet with a decisive click. "Full court-martial. Insubordination, racial discrimination, conduct detrimental to good order and discipline, and creation of a hostile environment. I also recommend investigation of the entire group involved in the documented messages." Morrison's composure finally broke. "This will destroy my career. 15 years of service. You can't." Diana's reply was icy and final. "I didn't destroy your career, Lieutenant. You did that yourself, one racist joke at a time. I just documented it." General Hayes signaled to the military police. "Lieutenant Morrison, you are under arrest for violating Article 134 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. You will be escorted to detention pending formal investigation. As the MPs approached, Morrison made one last plea, his voice trembling. I'm sorry, I didn't know who you were. If I had known, Diana cut him off, her words sharper than any reprimand. That's exactly the problem. You thought you could treat me that way because you thought I was vulnerable. Your regret isn't for being cruel, it's for getting caught. As Morrison was led away in handcuffs, Diana turned to the assembled soldiers, her expression softening. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Military excellence has no color, leadership has no gender. Dignity is not a privilege, it is the right of every human being who wears this uniform. The cafeteria slowly came back to life, but the atmosphere had changed. The moment marked not just the end of Morrison's reign of intimidation, but the beginning of a new era for the base. The impact of Diana's investigation spread far beyond Norfolk. Morrison was dishonorably discharged, stripped of his pension and benefits, his military career in ruins. Other officers implicated in the messages faced their own investigations and consequences. Diana's meticulous documentation and unwavering resolve led to a nationwide review of military conduct. 16 officers at 7 different bases were prosecuted for systematic discrimination. 3 bases implemented mandatory training on respect and diversity. Congress passed new legislation, the Washington Act, creating direct channels for reporting discrimination without fear of reprisal. Diana's legacy grew with each passing month. She was appointed Commander of Equality and Diversity for Naval Atlantic Command, her office overlooking the very cafeteria where she had once been humiliated. Letters began to arrive from across the country, messages from soldiers who had found the courage to speak up because of her example. One letter from a young black soldier in Texas read, Colonel, thank you for showing me that our dignity is worth more than the approval of those who despise us. I reported a case of discrimination here, and thanks to your example, I had the courage to refuse to be treated as less than human. Diana kept these letters in a special folder, each one a reminder that her fight had meaning far beyond her own experience. Reflecting on her journey, Diana understood that justice was not a destination, but a daily commitment. True leadership was not about power or rank, but about protecting the dignity of others and creating a future where no one would have to endure what she had. Morrison's downfall was not her victory. Her real triumph was in the change she inspired, the voices she helped to free, and the culture she helped to transform. Justice, she knew, was not about revenge, but about ensuring that the next generation inherits a world more just than the one before.